Cageside with John Morgan.
Welcome back, Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon, fresh off the heels, UFC 297. It's in the books, and we have a new DDP. Dricus Du Plessis gets it done via split decision. Controversy? Maybe. We can dive into it. More importantly, or equally as importantly, who's next for the new champ? And what's next for Strickland? Also, co-main event, Raquel Pennington wins the vacant bantamweight women's championship. Not going to say it was the most exciting fight of all time, but we do have a new champion, and it opens up a lot of possibilities. Is there an old rival in her future coming up? That could be fun right there. Dana White makes waves in Toronto, Canada. Sean Strickland did as well. We can go get into that as well. And kind of a bummer for the home crowd. The men go 0-5. Canadian men go 0-5 on the card. I'm not sure they were looking for that to happen. Probably the UFC wasn't looking for that to happen. But hey, you're fighting at the highest level. That stuff happens. A guy to help me break all that down. You follow him on Twitter, John Morgan _MMA. John Morgan, what's up, brother?
I'm good, man. You laid out some of those big storylines that we got to talk about, but that's what makes the pay-per-view weeks good. So I feel like the year has started. Like this season is officially underway, right? We had our off season. We had our little holiday break. We came back with a fight night. I felt like that was like the preseason, kind of getting things going. And the first pay-per-view's in the books, man. We're ready to go for 2024.
So with the main event of 297, we do have a new champ. Dricus Du Plessis knocks off Sean Strickland via split decision. 29-28, 29-28, 28-29 across the board. With that being said, how did you score it?
I had this one for Dricus Du Plessis. I had it 3-2. I gave Sean Strickland the opening round and the closing round, 1 and 5. And I had Dricus Du Plessis winning 2 through 4. Some close rounds along the way that I could see. So I will say that when it came time to read the judge's decision, I wasn't 100% sure I knew who was walking away from the belt, but I felt pretty confident with my scorecard. 48-47, Dricus Du Plessis, rounds 2, 3, and 4. What about you?
This is tough for me. I had Dricus winning, and I tend to agree with you. 2, 3, and 4, and possibly 5. Okay. It did that last 30 seconds do enough for Sean Strickland. And if you really watch it, he kind of was getting tagged in that last exchange too. It was just, he was moving forward a lot more, making the bigger movements. But I can't definitively say without going back and really detailed watching it again, if he did win all those rounds. I knew going in, 1, he got 2 at first. I'm like, he might have gotten it. I'm going to say all that to say this. The right man won, in my opinion. So if I was judging it on totality, the right man won. If I have to break it down, I'm going to give him edged out 2. He won 3. I'm not sure how that got flipped on one of the scorecards. He won 3. He dominated 4. And then 5 was very, very close. So I can see how Strickland was a little bit upset, thinking he did enough. But, styles make fights. And we both said that this was going to be an interesting stylistic matchup for him. And it played out kind of how we talked about.
Yeah, it really did. I couldn't help but think as we were watching it, talking about who was being the aggressor, right? We talked about the importance of forward movement because both these guys are like that. They like to move forward. They like to be the ones pushing the pace. They like to be the ones that's setting the rhythm, right? And so you can kind of see those momentum shifts along the way, which I thought made this interesting, right? Like I like fights that have like a little a little back and forth, a little give and take along the way. And we got a little bit of that. And yeah, you're right. I can understand Sean Strickland making the protest. To be honest, and I'm kind of like you, I was a little bit surprised to see that 3 was the round that switched to the other way in that split decision because I thought 2 was awfully close, and 2 was when that left eye for Dricus Du Plessis really got the damage, right? And when we're talking to the judges about what they're looking for, they are weighing damage. Now, I do think there's a big difference to be made between concussive type blows versus, just something that you're seeing, a cut, something like that. Cosmetic, exactly. And so, I could see maybe that damage. But, when it's swelling up like that, I think there's a little more than just cosmetic there. But so I was a little worried about that one and thinking, am I leaning the wrong way here? But I felt like 2 was the right one. But Sean Strickland, man, he kept it close and he responded, right? I mean, Eric Nixon comes out there in round 5 and says, listen, man, before this final round, I need some champ stuff from you here.
Leave nothing for the swim home. I heard that specifically, and I love that turn. Burn your boats, leave nothing for the swim.
It's amazing, right? I mean, that's something that a terminology that's always used at Extreme Couture. Leave nothing for the swim home, burn the boats. And I thought Sean Strickland responded. I mean, I don't know that Sean Strickland has a way of not leaving energy, right? Like that dude could go 10 rounds, 15 rounds, 20 rounds, but he did. He responded. He pushed forward. And his jab was on point throughout. He was landing that repeatedly. I think Sean showed what we talked about, that his defensive wrestling is really good. And it's interesting because his defensive wrestling is not so good in the fact that, like, he stops every takedown. It's just that when you take him down, he knows exactly the steps to take to get back to his feet, to separate and to pull away from you. And he does them, and you can tell he's a little frustrated by it because he doesn't want to. He wants to just punch back at you, but he showed that repeatedly. So I thought Sean Strickland fought a good fight. I just thought Dricus Du Plessis fought a little bit better, and Dricus Du Plessis really answered a lot of questions as well, right? Because we'd never seen him in round 4. We'd never seen him in round 5, and we didn't know if he was going to be able to perform there. So when Sean Strickland banked that opening round, I started thinking, man, well, I'm pretty sure he's going to take 4 and 5, and he's already got 1 in the bank. But Dricus Du Plessis answered a lot of questions and showed that, hey, man, I know there were question marks around me, but that didn't mean that I wasn't able to answer them, that I wasn't capable of fighting those late rounds. I thought he fought a great fight.
And let's be honest, the question marks surrounding him were because I believe his style and the herky-jerkiness, like, people just don't believe in him.
Right.
But I truly believe that. And I do want to, like, kind of take a step back to come forward. We always talked about, and you mentioned this when we first started talking about who was going to dictate the pace, and moreover, who was going to dictate the pressure, because that's where the fight was going to be won. And me and you both said it. Now, surprisingly, we thought early DDP, late Strickland.
Yep.
It was early, meaning round 1, Strickland.
Yep.
And then almost the entire rest of the fight was DDP. What do you attribute, because we don't see Sean move backwards, if any at all, except when he's maybe fighting off a takedown or something? What do you attribute that to? Do you attribute that to just literally the specimen in the sheer force that DDP has? Or you think it may have been, I don't want to call it a strategy, because I know Nixon kept on saying, you got to get going, you got to get going. So what do you attribute to him taking that back step to?
It's funny because I was thinking about that exact same thing ever since the fight, right? Because in round 1, he's moving forward, and you and I, again, as we said, who's going to take the first step back? Well, the answer was Dricus was the one that took the first step back. Oh my gosh, he's setting the tone. Afterwards, Dricus said, hey, I decided that was our strategy. I was going to fight his fight early on, and then I was going to make the adjustments later once I felt comfortable, once I felt the range to fight my type of fight. So he's saying it was an adjustment in his game plan. I'll be honest, I didn't see necessarily too much of a difference in the way he was approaching it and the way his movement, but it just seemed like Sean was more accepting of moving backwards and retreating. I almost wonder if some of those mental things that we were talking about coming in this fight had some kind of play there. Was maybe the edge not there with Sean? There had been a lot of talk about all the distractions that happened outside of the cage, all the emotions that came up in the build-up to this, and I don't know if that factored in, because when even Nixick, as you said, is kind of having to tell the guy, like, get fired up. And sometimes I wonder if Sean is just almost too comfortable in there, right? Like, it is amazing to see how comfortable he is in the chaos of the cage, right? Because he's done all those years of fighting, all those years of hard sparring, and he's so relaxed, and you can see it on his face. But I almost wonder if it's like, it's too relaxed. Like, bro, this is a world championship fight right now that's starting to slip away from you. Like, where's that gear to turn it up? Yeah, you feel comfortable, but where's the response to it? Similar to the way we see in grappling sometimes, right? Where, like, guys are on their back, but they feel comfortable because they don't feel threatened, because they're okay working from guard. But all of a sudden you're like, bro, you're letting rounds slip away. So it was difficult for me to place exactly on it, but it was surprising to see. I want to credit it purely to Dricus and the brute force that he is, the threats of the takedowns that he showed, right? He was able to secure some takedowns, even though he wasn't able to keep it there very long. He was throwing some kicks and that sort of thing. I want to credit all to him, but I wonder if there was something going on with Sean as well.
Yeah, I don't know about that. There was an adjustment made in round 2, right? And I saw it. I didn't see it a lot repeatedly, but I did see it in 2, and then I saw it, dropped in 3, 4, and 5 as well. And what I noticed in round 2 is he started answering the jab with a jab, then throwing the haymaker behind it, which, it kind of would hit Sean, and then the haymaker came, and so he'd have to block, rotate out away, and then a leg kick would almost come right behind that. So it kept him on those skates, and then it would almost repeat itself an exchange or two later, right? Sean Strickland would throw that just beautiful jab.
Amazing. Best in the business.
He would throw that beautiful jab out there, and Dricus would, at the same time, like right after he saw throw the jab, that jab would come right back, followed by the looping wild haymakers that typically didn't connect, but it would get Strickland going backwards, left and or right, and then a kick would come somewhere after that.
And you're spot on, man. And that's such great analysis and observation. But what I was seeing is I don't understand why at that point then you don't just kind of dig that back foot and like, I've got to regain some ground here, right? Like I've got to press. Or is it because he's got that beautiful jab to work behind, right? I mean, like I said, I think it's the best in the business. It's so crisp, it's spot on. But as you said, he was reacting to Dricus's offense instead of instilling his own and being first to the shot and dictating the pace. And that's why I don't want to take away credit, because everything you said is 100% true from Dricus. He fought brilliantly, but it just felt like the answer to be like, no, I'm digging the heel in and I'm moving forward. I'm not going to move backwards anymore. Wasn't there for some reason. I don't know what that was.
Another interesting thing that I noticed in this fight was the teeps weren't plentiful, right? There wasn't nearly as many as the Izzy fight and fights previous to that. And I took note of it, probably around round 3. And Nick even said, I want you throwing more push kicks. Coincidentally, when he said that, I noticed what happened the first push kick or teep that happened is Dricus knew those were coming. And so when it came, he threw a right hand, like as he was coming up, he would lunge in and hit a right hand. So yeah, the teep would hit, but then Strickland would be off balance because of it, which then made that train keep moving forward for Dricus.
That's a great point. And I thought maybe internally it was the threat of the takedown as well that made him want to throw those less, because it was so effective against Israel Adesanya, right? But in that for the most part, you pretty much know Izzy's not going to shoot in on you, right? He wants to stand out there and kickbox and do what he does, so you feel free to throw those kicks, right? I don't know if that factored in or not. That was kind of what was going through my head as I assumed that Sean was. And again, Sean has beautiful takedown defense, but it's not necessarily the greatest in making sure he stays upright every time. It's just he gets taken down, but it's really, really hard to hold him there. He immediately does what you got to do, right? Dig in an underhook, get to a knee, stand, turn inside.
Did you see the switch he hit in round 2?
The
Beautiful.
switch was gorgeous, right? Kind of baited him and hit that switch, man. That was unbelievable, beautiful. And that's what I'm saying. That's where I think he's great at. Maybe more, instead of saying defensive wrestling, maybe it's more like the defensive scrambling and the escapability that he has is where he stands out. But I assumed the threat of the takedown was maybe one reason that he wasn't throwing the teeps quite as much. But that's a great observation from you as well, that it was just the way Dricus reacted to it with the strikes that made me realize, hey, this is not going to be an effective tool for me in this fight.
Yeah, the one thing I credit where credit's due. I think the odds makers both kind of had the edge to Dricus. I think me and you slightly gave it to Dricus just because there was more ways to win. Mm-hmm. The way he did win kind of surprised me by the way he pushed Strickland back. But there's a lot of external factors into making that happen. The one thing that I just have to take my hat off to him was for being as massive of an 85er that DDP is. The cardio that he had through those 5 rounds was absolutely ridiculous. And I think, not saying now Strickland is probably, if not the one of the most mentally tough fighters there are. But you can't tell me that that's not saying something to you. Saying, when I've been able to break every fighter that I've fought against with my strikes and my pressure, but I can't break this guy, and then it turns into a snowball effect to a degree.
It has to. And listen, I mean, Sean is down to scrap with anybody, but I'm sure he thought the same thing that we did, right? Because, and I think it's important to say that the question marks around Dricus's cardio and his ability to fight late wasn't necessarily a criticism. It was literally that. Like, if you've never seen a guy fight in round 4 or round 5 in his entire career, you just don't know how he's going to react. And a guy who looked
like he was struggling through 3.
Exactly.
Visually, at least. I don't think he really was, but visually.
Yeah, and he always talked about that, right? Before he had the nose surgery, that it looked, but he would even admit, he's like, it looks bad. I know it looks bad. I'm breathing through my mouth. It looks like I'm exhausted. I promise you I'm not. And again, so you add that into the fact that we've never seen 4 or 5. We just didn't think so. I'm sure Sean thought the same thing. He had to have. I mean, as much of a veteran as he is, sure, he's willing to scrap, but he has to think, man, I get this dude late, and there's no way he's going to be able to keep up with me. And he was. And that had to be frustrating as well. That had to be a little bit frustrating for Sean to just have to deal with that and think, I wasn't going to have to put up with this anymore late. But he did.
In the little things in the corners, it wasn't. I just do think it was an off night for Strickland. I mean, I don't want to discredit DDP. I mean, we both kind of lean slightly that way. So we're not.
Yep.
I'm not discrediting him when I say this. But if you ever watch Extreme Couture and Nixet when they corner Strickland, they give him 1 or 2 little pieces of advice and get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
They were motivating him. I've never seen that before.
I agree, man. Smart observation as well. It just felt like the edge wasn't there for some reason. I don't know what it is. An off night, as you said, mental distractions, self-sabotage. Who knows? It just felt like the edge wasn't there. That little chip on the shoulder, you know what I mean? That we'd see sometimes. It wasn't there. The ability, like I said, to want to fire back and to want to turn the tide. So I agree with you. He was still doing the same thing, right? He never sits down in the corner. He never even goes all the way back to the corner. He's basically getting advice out there in the center of the cage. He did all those things, but I feel like if you put video of him in between rounds against Adesanya and him in between rounds against Du Plessis, you would notice a little bit of the body language difference between the two and just a little bit of fire missing. And I don't know what it was, but it's just a little something missing.
There was. I mean, I agree. I noticed it. I said I've never seen them have to motivate them. Like usually,
right.
Usually it's like, hey, just keep, and it's kind of funny whenever they've cornered him. Hey, just keep this in mind. Maybe do this after he does that. All right, here's some water, champ. We're out. Yeah. I mean, that's how he would get cornered before. Never, you got to go. You got to go. Leave nothing for the swim. Yeah, prior to this, it never happened in a Strickland corner.
I agree. You get a couple of good job MFers in there, you know what I mean? And you don't. You're right. You don't, because the guy is such a veteran. He sees the game. He understands it all. He rarely needs much advice whatsoever except, hey, continue this, or hey, this is something we observed that maybe you can add in. But you're right. I think you're spot on with that. It felt a little different. Like they knew that their guy was a little bit off. They needed to bring him up a level or two.
This is going to sound like an odd question, but I think it's a legitimate question to ask. And I want to preference this with last week we talked about, is Sean Strickland that big of a star? I'm going to answer that. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let me point it out.
We'll get into all that here in a second, but he is that big of a star. We texted back and forth.
That's what I was going to say. I was just going to point out, let the record reflect. I actually reached out to you in the middle of the week and said, sir, I was wrong. You were right. Sean Strickland is so over. This man is a star.
And so that leading into the fight makes me think of was he mentally there? I mean, it's hard to handle, massive amounts of pressure like that of being the star. We'll see if O'Malley can do it his next fight. We've seen this. And I don't want to call it self-sabotage, but I do want to call it uncharted waters that he didn't know how he would react being the beloved figure.
Yeah. Listen, I think it's a very fair question, and listen, I'm the one that threw the word self-sabotage out first, and I don't even know that it's a conscious thing when people do that, right? But the thing about Sean Strickland, right? We know where he came from. We know how awful his childhood was. We know everything that he's been through to be where he is, and throughout his career, and I don't just mean in this championship run, like throughout his career, I always felt like, and it got amplified in this past year where he became this megastar, that he always kind of felt like I don't really deserve to be here. Or I don't belong to be here, or I'm not supposed to be here. And so, I think that's why some of the things when he says some of the things he says, and he has no worry about doing whatever. I don't care if I piss off any sponsors or whatever. I'm just going to do this. I don't know. There's a part of me that wonders if he's even comfortable in that spotlight, if he's even comfortable having all those eyeballs, if he's even comfortable with everybody pouring through everything that he's been through. So I don't think it would be anything that he would do consciously to try to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to not give 100%, and I'm going to hand over the belt, and it'll make life better for me. No. But man, this game is it's so mental, and it's in like little degrees. 1% of being off at the highest level changes everything. And I can't put my finger on what it is that felt like it was just a little bit off. And I wonder, again, this is, amateur psychologist hour over here or whatever, but I do wonder if some of that had something to do with it, where it's like, I don't know that this is really the life I want to leave. I just want to go to the gym, and I want to fight, and I want to go home and shoot guns, and I don't really want to do interviews and talk to people and have to shoot videos and all that. I just wonder. I wonder if that could factor in at least somewhat.
Hard to say it wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, food for thought. I mean, you just brought up a lot of things that I hadn't thought about, and you may be onto something. What is somebody at their core value? Do they want to be this, or are they happy doing that?
Right. Which is why when you bring up a guy like Sean O'Malley, like I think Sean O'Malley like craves the spotlight. I think he craves all the attention. You know what I mean? I think that dude was like built to be center of attention. So I think he'll respond to it differently. Still got a tough fight on his hands, but I don't know. Again, this game. And people that are intimately familiar with the sport realize that as much as training is involved, as much as physical tools are involved and skills are involved, man, it is so mental and psychological at its core.
So now post-fight, Dricus is interviewed, and I want to settle something right now. And you seem to me the man who can pronounce names better than anybody. Is it Dricus, Dricus? Yeah, everybody's calling it something different. I would assume it's Dricus. I've heard that the most.
So it's funny. So as a media member with the UFC, they actually give you a portal where all the voice recordings. By the way, it's John Anik who got these voice recordings done because they were never done before he joined the team, but they do it in other sports and ESPN. So we have access to the file of these guys saying their name, and it's a little bit different than Dricus, but a little bit different than Dracus. It's somewhere in between there. It's definitely not Dricus. Sean Strickland was not having it right. I don't know if he was doing that on purpose to mess with him or what.
And then some media were like taking his pronunciation and calling him Dricus, and I was like,
yeah, I kind of go. So it's a little. If you hear DDP say it himself, it's South African. It's got a little. It's somewhere between Dricus and Dracus. So I just kind of go with Dricus and make it easy.
Yeah. I'll just say it fast. Dricus.
There you go. Or go with DDP, Du Plessis, whatever it may be. Call him champ.
So he gets on the mic post-fight, and he calls out Izzy. And he says there's, and then in the post-fight press conference, he said there's nothing personal. He just thinks that's the fight that the fans want to see. Is that the fight to make, or with it being as competitive as it was, with Strickland dismantling Izzy, the fight prior, is a rematch the fight to see? Or and I say I'm leaning towards Izzy because I think from the UFC's perspective, like they look at Strickland as an attraction, not their everyday blue collar worker champion. Right.
Yeah, to me, I would say the fight to make is with Israel Adesanya right now, right? And for a number of reasons, right? Number one, they had so much buildup already, right? I mean, these two were already supposed to fight. Dricus wasn't able to take the fight because he was injured. That's when Sean got his title opportunity. But I mean, that face-off, that tension. I know Du Plessis says it's not personal, but it's got to be at least a little bit personal after they got up and had that exchange, right? So the heat that was there between them, that to me is the fight that you got to make, because you never know. I mean, you know how this sport works. You say, oh, well, we can get to that later, and then things change. Somebody gets hurt. Somebody changes weight classes. Somebody loses, whatever it may be. You lose these opportunities. We almost lost the opportunity, and the way that these fights worked out, they circled back, and now we have it again. So that to me is the fight to make. But then it goes another level. When you know that Dana White has been talking about for so long how one of his biggest dreams is to get the UFC to Africa, right? He wants to build performance institutes over in Africa. He really wants to invest in developing the sport, building the sport. And now you've got a South African champion. You've got an African-born former champion. They've talked about, the real African. I mean, that's where all that tension came between them. And so I think if you can especially do this event in Africa. Now, I don't know if it can be done that quickly. There's a lot of logistics and things that have to be figured out, but they've been trying to figure it out for some time. It's not like they're starting from square one. If you can do that fight in Africa, my goodness, what an introduction to the continent that would be. So I think it's the fight to make, and it's especially the fight to make if you can do it in Africa.
Do you think there's a possibility of 300? Dricus had brought up 300. I'm just throwing it out there because he said it. It seems like awfully fast turnaround. And for somebody with Izzy who says he wants to get back in, only big fight, like, I don't know. Is that way too quick of a turnaround?
It seems too quick to me. I mean, stranger things have happened, right? But it seems too quick for me. And when I think about a guy like Dricus who turned down that title shot, right? When you see a guy know that he's on the cusp and the UFC says, you ready for that shot? We got you. We need you on this date. If that guy is willing to stand up and say, man, I would love to, but I know I'm not 100% right now, and so I can't do it right now, because that's risky, right? You turn down that title shot. You remember, Dana White was a little bit annoyed with him. You could see that he was a little frustrated. You never know if that thing's going to circle back around. If he was willing to be that disciplined when he was the challenger, I'm sure he's going to be willing to stay disciplined if he's the champ. If he's not now, look, maybe he did come out 100% of that fight, but that was 5 rounds at a high level. It looked to me like he was limping a little bit as he walked out of the cage. He'd already had a foot injury before, so to me, look, stranger things have happened. Money talks. The opportunity to be on a historic card like that may be meaningful for him. But to me, it seems like too quick of a turnaround. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I just think it may be caught up in the moment. Yeah. After the fact, cooler heads will prevail.
It never hurts to say, like, well, I'd be open to. I mean, why turn down the opportunity before it's even been offered to you, right? At least just say, hey, we could talk. Call me. Let's see.
So now Strickland, I mean, usually when somebody loses their strap and they think that they were wronged, or they think, hey, I deserve the immediate title shot. I hadn't heard Strickland come out and say, I deserve the immediate title shot. I just haven't heard it yet. He may have. I haven't read it. I haven't seen it.
I haven't either. And he said, he came out with the tweet and said, I thought we had it, but we move on. But he didn't say, and we got to do it again right away. You owe me another one. That was too close. He didn't say anything like that. Now, right. I'm not saying that he would, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I honestly wonder, does he even care? I mean, he came out and it was an interview with Megan O'Leary, I believe, where he said like his belt was like sitting under a pile of dirty clothes at his apartment. Like, I legit don't think he cares one bit about the title. And he said as much, right? But some people say that and you think, well, maybe it's just their way of kind of dealing with it. And then they believe that's how they sound humble or whatever. I legit think he doesn't care about the belt at all. Like, I think if they were like, hey, we'll give you a rematch, but there's no way you can win the title. You can fight Dricus again, but the title's not going to be on the line. I think he'd sign up in a heartbeat. Be like, yeah, I want that fight again. I don't care if the belt's on the line. So I don't think he cares. If I'm just being honest, I'll pull it down. I don't think he cares about the title one bit. But I think him and Dricus will fight again at some point down the line.
Is that something where he sits out, waits, or does he capitalize on this fame and success that he is? And because I think I'm correct when I'm going to say the UFC might not want to be him in that top spot. They don't not want to see him in that top spot either. But they view him kind of like I view him, as an attraction. This guy is an attraction.
Yeah, what's funny is I think there's a better chance of Sean Strickland being on UFC 300. You know what I mean? Like, that dude just loves to fight. So I think he would accept any fight. I think Sean might be in a position now where, like, I don't know that there's a fight you could make that he could headline UFC 300, but he could be on it, and I think that speaks to exactly what you're saying. But I do think Sean has kind of entered that realm now where it's like a Nick Diaz, a Nate Diaz, maybe a Cowboy Cerrone, where it's like, I don't care who they're fighting. It doesn't even matter to me. I just want to watch them fight, and I'm signing up for it. As I said, I will bow to you in your assessment of his star power, man. It was on full display in Canada. The dude is absolutely a star. But I think he's entered that realm where it's like, look, he reached the very height, man. He reached the top of it, and that's cool. And now I don't even know if it matters who he fights. I don't think the ranking matters. I don't think any. It just, let's see the dude fight against other guys that'll make fun fights. I think that's the way he feels too.
I tend to agree with that. Yeah, like I said, I look at it like, Andre the Giant back in the day, he just toured the country as an attraction because people wanted to see him. He didn't need a belt. He didn't need a title. He was just this attraction that people wanted to see. Strickland is an attraction that people want to see now. He is a star. I don't think he's very marketable in a corporate sense, but when the UFC wants to build something, like, he would be the guy to build fight night arena shows around.
100%. Again, he could fight anybody in the division. You know what's funny is I'm looking at the rankings. I'm taking a look at the middleweight rankings. I think, what fight makes sense, right? Obviously, they'll be updated later today, and we'll find what they are. But
go Piper.
Piper's not even in the rankings, and that's a hell of a fight. He's not even in the rankings. But you know what? I would watch that fight, and I guarantee, obviously, Piper would take, and I guarantee you Strickland would take it. Strickland's not that guy to be like, well, he's unranked. He's got to earn his way to the top. He'll be like, let's go. If that's the guy
Piper's going to be a star too, man. This guy can knock people's domes off, and he's fighting Jack Hermanson. I want to see if Hermanson can get him down to the ground. It's a big if, but I digress.
What about it's a terrible stylistic matchup, but what about Hamzat?
Okay, this is going to sound weird. I don't think the UFC wants to do that to either of these guys.
That's fair. It's fair.
Because look at this. Let's say this is a main event somewhere. It's a 5-round fight, and let's say that Chimaev does not get him out of there in the first 2 rounds.
Right, which is not an easy thing to do when you're talking about Sean Strickland.
Are you going to want to see Chimaev, what could possibly happen at that point to a star of yours?
Nope.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
Do you want to see the potential of Strickland getting absolutely throttled within 2 minutes? Do you want to see that?
No, you make great points. You're right, because it is very possible that Hamzat could ragdoll him, at which point you're like, dang, we just had this big star that was a champ. He lost. We gave him this, and now where's his marketability? Versus, you're 100% right, Strickland could also extend Hamzat and make it very, very difficult for him and potentially beat him, or at the very least make it, a fight that's not fun and that's not dominant, and you take away that aura from him. So you're probably right. From a practicality standpoint, I think you lay out why that doesn't make sense. I was just thinking of like the
now from a fan perspective, it makes 100% sense. But from a corporate UFC structure, like, I wouldn't make that fight.
I think you're smart, because Hamzat wants that big jump to the top, right? And he's hanging out at number 9 right now, and so this would be a way to jump to the very top. So that's what I was thinking from that perspective. But I think you lay out a pretty good case why, from the UFC perspective, they might not want to see that. I mean,
he couldn't get Kamaru Usman out there in the first 2 rounds. In the round 3, he was getting it put on him, and I think 4 and 5 would have been worse. My personal opinion.
I agree. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. I mean, I bet he's not on the shelf that long. I imagine, knowing Sean, he's not going to want to stick around hanging out too long. He's going to want to book something quick. I'll be really, really interested to see what they do with him. But the man is a star. There's no question about it. The man is a star, and I think you can put him up with anybody. Even, as you said, Joe Piper, an unranked fighter. You could put him in there with him.
Well, if he beats Jack Hermanson in 2 weeks, he ain't going to be unranked anymore.
Agree. That is true. That is true.
So, with that being said, talking about star power, what really displayed his star power was the way that the Canadian audience responded to him, and the way social media responded to him in these just ultra viral viral moments at the media days and the press conference and even post-fight. Now, him and Dana White made a lot of headlines with these ultra viral clips. I want to start with Strickland. Actually, I want to start with the reporter who was asking Strickland. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. Just type it in on social media. You will find it. Just type in his name, social media.
Yes, you will.
And essentially, in a way, I'm actually appalled that a media personality is going to come at him in that way. I don't know if appalled. It's inappropriate. It's inappropriate in my opinion. But I'm not the journalist and I'm not the media personality. You are. What do you make of this?
It's interesting, right? Because these media days are an open forum, right? I mean, you have the ability as a credentialed media member to ask about anything. One of the things that I've always talked about throughout my career is I've tried to give advice to other people and, people on the way up is that I think there's a time and a place for everything. Now, sometimes that may be the only access you're going to have to somebody, and so because that's the only access you have to somebody, you realize that's the only time that you can ask the questions that you need to ask. But I'll be honest with you, when it comes to some of these, outside of the cage things and some of these personal beliefs and morals and principles and stuff, I just don't know that fight week, cutting weight, championship on the line is really the best place to do it. That's not to say that I find that Alexander K. Lee is wrong for what he did. He absolutely has the right to do it. I just don't know that it really is as fruitful as you might want it to be. Whereas you could probably schedule some time outside of fight week, whether it be, weeks in advance or weeks after, and probably get a more thoughtful answer, probably get, a little bit more time in a little bit different setting. There's not a ton of cameras around. There's not a ton of people around. You might actually get, a little bit more honest response. So I don't find anything wrong with what the journalist did. It's just not the way I personally would approach it and the way that I would want to do with it. And the other thing, too, that I've always wondered, too, is, I don't know, and maybe this isn't just MMA. It's kind of all of sports. Like, sometimes I wonder why we care so much about what people think about stuff outside of the sport. Like, what does their opinion mean? I mean, I don't necessarily understand what we get with that. Now, if he said something that's inappropriate, if he said something that you feel is over the line, which I believe Alexander Lee did, it's fully appropriate to ask. But sometimes I just wonder why we even care what these athletes feel about things. And I'll tell you something else. I wish some of these athletes would get a little bit more comfortable with just saying, like, look, I don't have an opinion on that, or I don't really want to talk about that right now. Like, I think athletes need to realize, too, in all sports, again, you're under no obligation. In the same way that the journalists have the right to ask anything they want, you have the right to turn down answering any question you want to. And you don't have to be rude about it. Do I think Sean's response was measured and appropriate? Like, no, it was over the top. But, we know how Sean is. And you knew exactly how he was going to answer that question. It's no surprise.
Yeah. That's kind of my point, right?
Yeah, what did you think you were going to get out of it? I always wonder, like, what do you think? What are you looking for, and what do you think you're going to get?
So, I have a couple of opinions on this, and one, I think he's playing to, like, the reporter is playing to his audience, right? So he's playing to his audience, and Strickland's definitely he's playing to his audience, but I don't think he cares if he has an audience or not, right? But it's beware what you wish for, right? Because I think most people are going to look at that and saying, you know what? Strickland, who a lot of people have said, not us, because we always say he's probably a lot smarter than you're giving him credit for. But a lot of people are looking at him being like, dude, you just got owned by this dumb jock fighter guy who's, and I'm not going to say own in the way he responded to the question, but like, if you're going to stand on that moral principle and ask that question, stand on that moral principle and ask that question. He allowed Strickland to just railroad him, right? And he's like, well, I guess I'm going to moving on then, you know what I mean? And he just got railroaded and, it made for a viral. I even texted you. I said, this guy is must watch TV. Love him, hate him, indifferent, you gotta watch them.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a more unfiltered person in any sport, even martial arts, of course. But the guy just literally says what's on his mind, whether it's right, wrong, whether it's informed, whether it's incorrect, whatever the case may be. He literally just says what's on his mind and doesn't think twice about it, doesn't care whatsoever. So you knew what you were going to get. You knew how he was going to answer the question. So again, I didn't necessarily love Sean's response. Again, I just wish he would get more comfortable, and he's never going to, but people in general, it's okay to just say, like, A, I don't have an opinion on that, or B, I don't want to answer that. It's fight week. I'd prefer to focus on that. All those are incredibly appropriate answers, without having to delve into some of those things.
He went for belittling.
Yeah, he did. And you hate to see that. Yeah, you hate to see that. So.
Now, moving on to a little bit more belittling is, at what point were they going to learn their lesson? Let's go to the post-fight press conference with Dana White. Now, I actually feel bad. Like, the first guy, I don't feel so bad for it because it's like you poked the bear intentionally and the bear bit you, right? That's how the first one kind of is. I don't feel bad. I kind of do feel bad for the second reporter with Dana White. And was it the same guy?
No, it was a different guy. No, it was a different guy.
Okay. Same tone and tenor of a question, right? So wonder. And he says something like, hey, with everything with Sean Strickland and, people misconstruing it or not misconstruing it, people believing that it's embedded in, transphobia or whatever it may be. You give these guys a long leash, and Dana White jumped all over him.
Yeah.
He jumped all over. And I understand what he's asking, because he's asking basically, you're the CEO, you're the president, you're the top dog, but you're also their sponsors. At what point do you say, like, listen, he told up straight up Brock Lesnar, you got to make it right with Bud Light years ago.
Right. No, it's funny. I agree. I felt bad in that situation too. Dana White is very good at finding something and attacking. And unfortunately, he could have stuck with his question, just rephrase it. It would have been very simple to be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean leash was the wrong word to use. But what I meant to say is, you don't typically say something about what somebody's saying. But is there a point in time where it goes too far, where you have to say something and you have to step in and get involved? But I get it. Like, especially if you're not used to interviewing Dana or other people, especially in light of what happened earlier in the week, you probably felt really bad about being that guy as well. But it is, I think, to your point, it's just this is what I wanted to is, are you asking something because you firmly believe in it, or are you asking something because you just feel it needs to be asked? Because if you firmly believe in it and you want to follow up on it, I think you could quickly adjust what you were saying and, say, Dana, I'm sorry, leash was probably the wrong word to use there, but let me rephrase it. So I felt kind of bad for him as well. But, if you're going to get into it with Dana White, you better be ready, because he is not afraid. He's another one that's not afraid to come directly at you, look to attack you. He's not thinking, hey, something I say here could really get me in trouble with a sponsor, so I better be careful what I say. He's going to say whatever he feels like. So if you're going to go at him on something, you just got to be ready to make the adjustments and to answer back in whatever way you feel appropriate.
Now, peek behind the curtain for me for a second. And I don't know if you've ever asked this question or not, or if it's just understood. But when a sponsor comes on board, I would assume a conversation would be had of saying, okay, you're coming on board, good, bad, or ugly. You understand the business that we're in. Things are going to be said that you may or may not disagree with. We don't want to hear your shit after the fact of how we should discipline somebody, or how we should deplatform them, or anything like that. I mean, is that said with sponsors prior to?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, I think sponsors definitely have out clauses that they can say, if there's, something that's unbefitting of our company, then we can terminate this agreement. But yeah, I can tell you, I mean, I saw an interview recently, and I wish I could remember where I saw it, but I heard a clip where Dana White was saying, and I think it was kind of echoing, if you remember what Elon Musk said in that thing where he said, where it's like, if you're going to try to influence me with your, advertising money, like F you, let me make it clear, F you. And Dana White kind of echoed a similar thing and said, don't try to come at me and tell me how we need to act or what we need to do just because, you're a sponsor or a partner of ours. So no,
that was during the whole Peloton debacle.
That's right. 100% it was. So, as far as how much, direct conversation is had, I don't know, but I can tell you that Dana White has made it clear that, just because you're a partner with us doesn't mean that you're going to talk about how I act or how the, people within our company act. But at the same token, I mean, those companies absolutely have the right to say, you know what? I'm not so sure I'm so comfortable with this anymore. We entered this agreement, but I'm not comfortable with it anymore. And I got to be honest with you, I'm sure that, knowing the UFC, the way they do business, I'm sure they'd be like, fine, see you, appreciate you.
Yeah. I mean, I think whether you agree with Dana, disagree with Dana, if you agree with Strickland, disagree with Strickland, I think there has to be some level of respect that you have for a Dana White, that he is sticking to his convictions. Say whatever you want. This is a fight game. It ain't pretty. It's ugly at times, but it is what it is. I'm not trying to I may micromanage a lot, but I'm not micromanaging that. And he's been consistent, at least over the, last, let's say 5 years or so with it.
100%. Because there have been multiple times over the years where I've asked kind of a similar question to the gentleman was trying to ask at the press conference, which is, hey, I know you say this is the fight game, people say bad things or whatever, but is this a situation where you need to get involved?
DDP.
Yeah, I asked that very recently, and he said, nope, I don't feel that way at all. And he said that multiple times over the years, just like, man, I don't tell people what to say. I don't tell people what to do. Everybody's allowed to act the way they want to, and he stands by that, and that's their company principle.
And you take the flip side of that is, did you see the I think it was the Dan Le Batard show, the producer for the Dan Le Batard show?
I did see a clip there.
Dude, this guy was triggered by Strickland, and he was demanding, as an ESPN employee, he was demanding that ESPN take some retribution action against the UFC and Sean Strickland. So it's kind of funny that how opposite worlds are going to respond to something. And if you haven't seen that, go watch it, because you want to see somebody lose their S. This guy lost his shit over it.
It's just interesting. And obviously, man, you can go down a whole, rabbit hole here talking about stuff, but it just seems to me that if you don't feel something's appropriate and you're not a fan of it, I'm not going to do business with them anymore. I'm not going to watch anymore. But it's so much of, and they're incorrect, and so they need to pay for it. You know what I mean? And I've just never understood that. I mean, if somebody does something legally wrong, okay, then answer to the
You mean
law,
like jumping over 2 rows of seats and bashing somebody in the back of the head? But he didn't do that. He moved women and children out of the way.
If it's done in promoting an upcoming fight, it's okay. All right, we can do that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just weird to see different people's reactions. I was like, if you don't like it, I mean, there you go. It's another thing that Dana White has always said, right? You don't like it, don't watch it. Simple, done, bye.
But and ESPN comes up in 2025, but they ain't letting that. They are not letting that gravy train loose.
I don't think so. I mean, obviously the landscape is changing with sports media right now. You're seeing Amazon getting into it. Obviously, Apple has a bunch of money in the bank that they're trying to get into their streaming platforms. Netflix is actually looking. I mean, so all this streaming money is going to be out there. But again, and I'm sure all parties will have their conversations and their offers heard, but unless it's just some gargantuan amount of cash that you can't in good conscience turn down, I just have to believe that ESPN and the UFC find a way to continue doing business in their new deal. I think they both benefit each other.
And in the post-fight press conference, Dana White said, we're going to be sitting down in the next few months to start hammering out whether that new deal happens or not. But you'd have to think it would happen.
I think so. It's just been too successful of a partnership, and I think the UFC is obviously commanding a lot of interest for ESPN. They provide year-round programming. They've got all the time pay-per-views. So that's additional revenue they're generating. I mean, most of the people that you're going to partner with aren't actually actively bringing revenue to your platform, which the UFC is. So that's a big deal. And then from the flip side, I mean, look, man, it's still a powerful brand in the world of sports, man. I mean, yes, obviously Amazon and Apple and Netflix, I mean, these are all big, powerful brands as well with a lot of financial reserves, but they don't have that meaning in the sports world, that impact, right? I mean, it still holds true. If you're on ESPN, like, oh, that's instant legitimacy, right? So I just feel like these two brands benefit each other well. And I just, again, money talks, and somebody could come in throwing a bunch of it around. But I just think they find a way to keep doing business together.
Last thing before we get going, Raquel Pennington claims the vacant bantamweight world championship, and maybe brought everything down a little bit, but I think she has come out and said that that Julianna Peña had rubbed her the wrong way, and she's been wanting that fight forever. That's a fight I could get behind.
Oh, 100%. It's it's funny and talk about Raquel Pennington winning the championship because the fight wasn't great, right? I mean, if you're being honest, it wasn't a fantastic fight, but Raquel Pennington's story is so amazing that I almost feel bad criticizing the fight because I'm so happy for her as a person and what she persevered through. You think about when she fought Amanda Nunes and how disastrous that fight went and the criticism of her and her team afterwards. And then she's battled back through injuries and all these things. So it's such a great story, man. So I'm super happy for her.
And correct me if I'm wrong, she has more fights in the UFC women's division than anybody. Did I read that correctly?
Before becoming a champion. So that was the most fights ever by a women's athlete before becoming a champion. So pretty cool stuff, man. She fought the long road. That was kind of the same journey Michael Bisping had, right? Or he fought forever and he seemed like he was, bound to be the guy that just didn't quite get there. And now she got there. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, to me, there's no question about it. The Julianna Peña fight is the fight to make next. They were supposed to fight anyway. That's the fight that it was supposed to be. Julianna Peña got injured. The division needed to move forward, so they brought in Mayra Bueno Silva. This is the fight to make. Julianna Peña is going to sell the heck out of it, man. She is not afraid to get on a microphone or to get on social media and talk some trash. Raquel, it's not going to be a back and forth. That's just not Raquel Pennington's style. She's not a big talker. She doesn't really go. That's not her thing. She's kind of old school. She even talked about it, afterwards. She said, this new kind of entertainment era, that was never what it was about to me. It was about the martial arts aspect of it and being the best you could be and respect and all those things. So it won't be necessarily a two-way street of back and forth, but Julianna Peña will get out there and sell it for sure. That's the fight to make. It's just a matter of whether Peña is cleared. We don't have a date yet on her health and exactly when she's going to be ready to go after surgery, but that's the fight coming up. And again, even though the fight wasn't great, I think the story is great, and I'm happy for Raquel Pennington.
Was Raquel part of the 4 horsewomen?
No, she wasn't. She wasn't. Yeah,
but she was on that tough.
But she was on tough. Exactly.
I knew she was on that tough, but just not part of that.
Exactly.
All righty. Well, awesome. Before we get out of here, do I hear that there's a big Bellator PFL press conference coming up?
There is. So, still a little ways away from them having their first event as this new combined group. That'll be in February in Saudi Arabia. But this week, I'm actually heading to Miami tomorrow. The press conference will be on Wednesday. But it's basically the entire card of this huge super event that's coming out of all the PFL champions, all the Bellator champions. So the main event, Ryan Bader versus Renan Fajeda, which I love that fight, man. I think that's a phenomenal fight. They're going to be there in the main event. Impa Kasanganay and Johnny Eblen are going to be there. I mean, yeah, it just keeps going down the list, man. It's loaded up. Magomed Karamov, Jason Jackson. I'm reading off the list right here. Jesus Pinedo, Patricio Pitbull Ferry, Bruno Capelosa, Vadim Netkov, Clay Collard, and AJ McKee. How about this one out of left field? Tiago Maheta Santos versus Yoel Romero. They'll both be there. Clarissa Shields. Dude, I love this card. Bro, they came out swinging with this one. So that's in February, and Saudi Arabia is going to be the event. But this is the kickoff press conference. It's going to be the first time we've kind of seen these entities together since the acquisition. They've been kind of working through all the logistics. So I'm excited to get down there for this press conference. It'll be on Wednesday, Miami.
Kind of like when the UFC would do it and they'd bring all the fighters of things coming up, they're all on stage together. Is that what this is going to be like?
That's what I'm expecting to see. I haven't heard exactly yet exactly how they're going to lay it out. The details were scarce. We were just told, hey, here's when it starts. Here's where it is. Here's who's going to be available. But I got to think that's what you do, right? I mean, if you're looking for the display of force, which I think they're trying to do here, you got to have them all up on the stage at one time, right? I mean, you want to look and say, wow, look at all this star power. Look at everything we bring to the table. And then, again, I don't know, but I'm assuming they'll have them all face off afterwards because you got to see that happen. You got to have that. So, man, they're doing it big. I think they're doing this, look, it's, we've talked about it, right? I think this was a great potential move for the PFL and Bellator. They still got a lot of work to do. It's not an automatic home run. But this was big, and they came together right off the bat and said, for our first event as a combined entity, we're going to do this huge mega show. and they're doing it. Champ versus champ, and some great other intriguing matchups as well. Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is going to be fun.
Here's the most important question that I have. On this PFL Bellator presser, are you the first question guy?
I mean, come on. Is that even a question? Like, I hope so. I don't know. We don't have a routine there, but
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, you better damn make sure you are the first question guy. Universally the first question guy.
I'm not. So see, this is a seasoned reporter would go talk to public relations and be like, "Hey, would you mind if I kick things off?" That's kind of what I traditionally do. But see, veteran to the next status, I'm just going to go to the audio guy and be like, "Hey, bro, give me that microphone real quick. I'm starting things off. I'm gonna usurp all the operations. I'm gonna go to the people that are actually making it happen. I'm just gonna grab the microphone. I'll have it in my hand. I'll be representing us there. Don't you worry."
King of the mountain. The king of the mountain sits in front of me.
Let's do it. I'll make sure that they know Cageside is in the building.
Sweet. Well, yeah, awesome show this past week. And new DDP. Congratulations to him. Raquel Pennington, congratulations. Anything this weekend? I know. Are you going to be in the Apex Center?
So listen, this is a week off for the UFC.
That's what I'm saying. Week off, and then the following week,
the next week.
Shows.
But check this out. We will be in action. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, this Saturday night in Philadelphia, if you happen to be in Philadelphia, head to 2300 Arena. If not in Philadelphia, we're launching CFFC Muay Thai. So it's the debut of CFFC Muay Thai. If you can check it out in the building, check out the building. If not, we're going to stream it exclusively on the CFFC OnlyFans page. So sign up for OnlyFans. It gives you an excuse to sign up for OnlyFans. You know what I mean? If anybody's like, "Why are you over there on OnlyFans?" Be like, "Bro, I'm just watching some Muay Thai. Like, what are you doing on OnlyFans? How'd you see I was over?"
Yeah, my wife's going to be like, right.
You just show, like, look, there's a show here.
Statement.
My man John Morgan is just, he's going to be there calling Muay Thai. Yeah, so it's the debut. So I'm excited. It's been such an honor with CFFC. We started just doing mixed martial arts. We launched submission grappling. That has been phenomenal. We did a college wrestling program as well, which we're already set up for season 2, which is going to be even bigger. And now we're doing Muay Thai as well. So the debut is this weekend. So it's a busy week, flying out to Miami, then coming back to see some family and celebrate the wife's birthday, and then flying out to Philadelphia for the Saturday event. So a lot of stuff going on. How about you? Busy week for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the sigh there. It's like, yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking because, I got a game Friday night, Memphis Grizzlies game Friday night. Then after the game, now my mother-in-law is not going to watch this podcast, so I feel pretty comfortable not giving up the secret.
Right.
But so I have to drive with my family after the Grizzlies game Friday night, drive to Tulsa for a surprise birthday party for my mother-in-law on Saturday.
Wow.
So, yes, it's busy. And listen to this. I told you guys last week, we got hit by a snowstorm. That was an ice storm here in Memphis, Tennessee, like almost historic freezing temperatures. My kids have been out of school since last Monday, and they are still out of school today.
You are exhausted. You are worn out. I already know that.
And my wife is like, I got to be at work today. And she's like, "Oh, well, can you come home lunch and give me a break?" No, I can't. I was home helping you all last week. Like, I'm the man. I got to put my foot down.
I love it. Parents know, man. Like, hey, we want our kids to go to school to be educated, but we want our kids to go to school so we can get some stuff done by ourselves. We need to be alone for a bit. We got stuff to do.
Now, listen, I love my kids.
Of course.
More than anything, they were driving me up. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yep. Leave it at that. Leave it. How far is the drive from Memphis to Tulsa?
About 6 hours.
Okay.
That's yeah. Like anything under 6, anything 6 and under, like around that and under, I drive.
Yeah.
I'd rather than drive than fly.
But paying for plane tickets and dealing with the airports and all that. Good call. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. Well, happy birthday. I know nobody's going to see this, but I'll send my happy birthday wishes.
I'll make sure they all. Well, I can't have them watch it now because I'm bitching about it. I'm gonna say I'd make sure to have them watch the John Morgan happy birthday.
Just send them the clip, just the clip, and don't send them a link to the full show anywhere.
Well, good stuff. Fun episode for John Morgan. I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.